I'm Annie Duke. It should probably come as no surprise to you that you're going to want to play a small draw much differently than you would a big draw. In this lesson, we'll take a look at how and why you should be playing small ball poker with your small draws. While you're looking to play big pots on the flop with your big draws, you're really looking to do just the opposite with your small draws. Let's look at our earlier example where we held 6 of spades, 7 of spades, and the board was something like king of spades, 8 of spades, deuce of hearts. Since we just have 9 outs to hit our flush, and frankly, it's not going to be such a strong flush if you get there, we either want to play the pot really small or choose to play our hand as if we were bluffing. If we're the pre-flop raiser and we have position and our opponent checks to us on this kind of flop, we're going to want to bet, obviously, since we would be continuation betting here with most hands that we had anyway. But if, on the other hand, our opponent bets into us, doesn't matter whether he was the pre-flop raiser or we were the pre-flop raiser. As long as he bets into us, we're probably better off just flat calling the flop with our draw. There's no reason to raise our hand here because if we do, we give our opponent a chance to re-raise and move all in, which frankly is not going to make us very happy about the strength of our hand. By flat calling, we get to see the turn card for a relatively cheap price, and we give ourselves options on how to play the hand on the next street. For example, if our opponent bets the turn when a spade doesn't hit the board, we could raise and try to take the hand on a semi-bluff. On the other hand, we could also fold our hand if his bet is so big that we're not getting the right odds to call, or that we don't think we can push him out of the hand with a big raise. But if our opponent bets really small, let's say half the pot or less, we could flat call to see the river card since we're getting a good price to hit that flush now, or we could still try to take the pot with a semi-bluff raise. If our opponent bets the flop and then checks the turn, we also have more choices. We could either check behind and take a free card on the turn to try to hit the flush on the river, or we could bet here as a semi-bluff. Now, if you do decide to bet the turn, make sure you consider the fact that you're giving up that very valuable free card. And you're giving your opponent a chance to take the hand away from you by putting in a big check raise, which obviously you'll be folding to. What should really swing your decision here is how suspicious you are of your opponent's hand. If you really think your opponent is weak, then go ahead and bet. But if you feel like he may be trapping you with a strong hand, then check and take the free card. That applies to deciding about that semi-bluff as well. It matters how strong you think your opponent is when they bet that turn in your decision whether to flat call if he bets small enough to try to hit, or semi-bluff raise to try to get him to fold. Now, if your opponent raised pre-flop and then checks the flop, be very suspicious of his hand. In this case, it's so likely that he has a big hand that it's best to check behind him and take that free card in hopes of making your flush and punishing that guy for being so tricky. If you don't hit your hand on the turn and your opponent continues to lead out, please don't raise semi-bluff here since he's likely to be sitting on a very big hand. If your opponent checks the turn, so he checked the flop and checked the turn, you could check behind again if you want to and try to hit that flush, or you could semi-bluff bet since checking twice usually signifies that your opponent actually really does have a very weak hand.